Hello, we're back in Port Washington, Wisconsin. We're going to do a little yard tour of Jennifer Phillips Vanderberg. I knew I was going to get that bad again. I'm with the Wild Ones. My name's Lisa Otis, and we are talking about a project in Port Washington on Lake Michigan that the Western Great Lakes Bird and Bat Observatory is involved in. So I'm going to let Jen take it away. She's going to take us through a little tour of her yard.
So I'm the science director at the Western Great Lakes Bird and Bat Observatory, and we are actually in one of our test neighborhoods for the Neighborhood Habitat Improvement Project, which is just a project where we're trying to study the effects of native plants on birds and try to encourage more people to do that. But I'm trying to start that out right at ground zero at my house. That happens to be one of the test neighborhoods. So we're gonna walk along. This is all work in progress because I just bought this house, our first house, in August of this year, and there are a lot of non-natives here. So stay tuned. It'll probably change, and we'll be chronicling it on our social media. But we have removed a bunch of sod, which is our gross pile here, but the birds seem to really enjoy it. So a lot of migrating thrushes have really enjoyed picking everything out of there, and then squirrels too. But I think this is what a lot of people kind of get put into, is you see the classic neighborhood with big sprawling green space and a bunch of burning bushes and barberries and kind of the classic suburban areas. So we started by taking out the barberries because there's a park right kind of across the way, one block in, that is a naturalized area, except it's completely covered with barberries. So we wanted to make sure that we weren't contributing to that. So we took out 4 barberries that used to be here, and then we just put in yesterday these prairie willows that we got from the Bolo Bog shrub and tree sale, and fingers crossed that these guys survive and do well, but starting the process of replacing our non-native bushes with native ones. And then the other thing that we started this year, we put in a native garden bed of mostly flowers, but some grasses too. So I still need to get real markers in here, but
I was just going to say, that's awesome.
I love that idea.
Yeah, I do too.
yeah, I want to get some permanent ones in, but while I didn't want to slow down.
Marker.
Yeah.
If you find that, you let us know.
Okay. But I've been,
Great.
so these went in about a month ago. So the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District does a rain garden plant sale, which is where I got these. Unfortunately, we found out after ordering the plants that this is not a suitable area for a rain garden because if you dig down about 10 inches, you reach a really tough clay layer, which means you can't get the infiltration you need in a rain garden. So we intended to have a rain garden, but we ended up having a native plant bed instead.
Well, again, there's always a solution to problems like clay soil. You know, you can find plants that will work, and you can certainly swap out native plants for cultivars. You know, get rid of those. You can replace. There's a replacement for almost every type of plant and tree that's native and more beneficial.
Yes, exactly, and that's what we're trying to do here. And because one of the biggest barriers a survey participant said was deer in this area. There are always deer. I'm surprised when I drove down to originally talk to you, they were in Upper Lake Park just munching away. Classic. I've been joking around with the neighbors that this is really my test garden to see what the deer will eat, and then recommend that to other people.
There's certainly a lot of plants actually that deer won't eat.
Exactly.
And So, like I said, plants are for every circumstance. Yep.
Yeah.
They started out with a love affair with ducks, so it's even more appropriate.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When I worked for Fish and Wildlife running a duck hunt, and also grew up learning how to bird watch from hunters, because that's the people who watch birds in the area I grew up in.
Sure. Yep. So you put in these willows, which
Yeah.
they look really nice and healthy. That's yeah. I have not grown any myself. So
How tall
that'd
do
be
they get? Do you know,
interesting.
Jen?
So they're supposed, apparently in clay soil they don't get quite as tall as what I was told, but I want to say 4 to 6 feet.
Okay, that's good.
So
Yeah.
hopefully, especially with our clay soil, they'll mostly stay below the windows.
Right.
I'm assuming you can always trim them back,
Yes,
right?
and
Okay.
yes, they don't seem to be super popular, but Morton Arboretum has some that they kind of, I don't know, trim them into kind of balls.
like sculpt them.
Kind of
Yeah.
a growth habit.
Yeah, or not really cascading, kind of a, I don't know,
Arching?
bushing,
Like an arborvitae kind of trimmed thing,
like
or
kind of like, what is the thing
the
in
box
from
elder?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So
Oh, that looks great. You'll have to let us know how those
We'll see
work
how they go.
out. Yeah.
and see if they get eaten. And also a few other random plants in here, but New Jersey tea, interspersed in the non-natives. But work in progress. And then we also have some other plants that we're putting in. So on the side of the property, there's a wet, low area that we're gonna try red osier, dogwood, and black chokeberry in there, because both of those should be pretty good with the wet tolerance. And then also hazelnut, which is in for a drier area up here.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's people who landscape. You don't have to get rid of all your non-natives by any means. Some people, there's some that I love, and it can be a work in progress. But if you add just some natives, that is better than none. So you can start small.
Yeah.
You can start small with this. Hopefully, take out a little grass and put in some milkweed or something, you know. And yeah, people. I think people, and maybe you can attest to this from the survey results. They're worried about. But I love my hosta, and I love this plant. You know, it's like, okay, you can love it.
And that's one of the things that we have to tell people is like, no, we're not going to tell you need to get rid of it all. Really, we're talking about adding.
Yeah, exactly.
And what are you
Interspersing.
comfortable with? And this
Yep.
it's a process that this is your home, so it needs to be something that you love, and
Yep.
but natives can be a part of what you love too.
Exactly.
Well,
exactly.
and every garden goes through an evolution, so that at some point you might lose a tree, and where you had
Like the ash trees,
hostas
maybe?
growing
Yeah.
is now bright sunshine,
Yes.
and so it gives opportunities to start adding new and different things
Yep.
into the.
You've just described a part of my yard because it was mainly woodland, shade yard, about an acre. Well, I have a lot of ash trees on the property, and I had, they just really took a dive this past year.
Yeah.
And now I have brand new, full sun. I'm kind of excited, I gotta say. I've not been able to plant those kind of plants in my yard. So, as you said, circumstances change.
I had
and-
exactly the same thing on my property,
Did you?
where I had 27 ash trees that
Oh,
that I
yeah.
had to remove,
Yep.
and I actually really miss the shade.
Yeah.
But and I
Well-
have very sandy soil, so
Mm.
the combination of full sun and sandy soil
That's a
is-
challenge.
It is a challenge, but it's native plants that rise to the challenge.
Exactly.
Far better
Yep.
than other plants do.
Far
so-
better. Yep. And just speaking of the ash crisis, if you remember the Dutch elm disease
Yes,
days,
yes.
where whole streets were planted with just one type of plant, an elm plant, elm tree. You need to put different things in.
Yeah.
If you are just counting on one species of tree or plant, odds are something's going to happen to it over the years.
Well, and
so.
a very sad thing in Milwaukee on Lake Drive, where they had just the beautiful arches of the
Yep.
American elm tree,
Yep.
and they were removed they planted with another monoculture.
Yep.
Purple
Yep.
ash trees.
Yep. And guess what?
And the purple ash tree is succumbing
Yep.
to
Yep.
the.
That's why
emerald ash
biodiversity
borer.
is so important too.
It
Put different
absolutely
things in. Try different things. You're trying the willow in the front. Maybe it'll work. Maybe it won't. But
Yeah.
you know, you got to give it a try, and then you'll, as with time, gain the experience of what does work, what do I really love, and what am I going to do more of.
Yeah, exactly. And you talked about Doug Talamy, and right now, for me, what I've been trying to do is experiment with the shrubs that rise to the top for supporting the most
Yep.
insects. And for shrubs, willows are one of the biggest,
Very important.
highest biodiversity supporting shrubs. So that's where I'm starting, but everybody has to come to it where they're at, and that's a big part of this project, is just bringing people in where they're at.
Yep.
You mentioned oak tree is also, and I know
Yes.
Doug was
Yes.
telling me has that.
It's the
It's like
best
the very,
tree.
the white
That
oak
is
is being
the
the top.
best native
Jen and I
tree.
took
Yep.
a walk through the Forest Beach Migratory Preserve
It's
a
a
couple
beautiful,
weeks ago.
beautiful property.
And they have some oak trees there that are actually so beat up looking right now. And that's a good thing. That's the other thing we need to remind people of, is that just because there are holes in the leaves doesn't mean that
It's
it's a
dying.
failure. It means that it's actually doing what it's supposed to do, which is supporting this
Yep.
insect population. So
And native insects on native plants, they're not going to kill them, you know,
That's right.
like the Japanese beetle and other, you know, non-native insects.
Right.
So, yes, good point. You know, you look at this and
Yeah.
there's this hole here in the leaf. Well, that means there was maybe a caterpillar chomping on that for a while, and it actually probably,
But it's not
definitely,
gonna
look at
kill
that.
the
It's not
plant.
going to kill the plant. They can live together
right.
and, you know, support each other. So, I think, plant natives.
Exactly.
We'll go
And
back
I
to
know
them.
John Crane, when you speak to him, is really, because he's in charge, or supervises all of the street tree planting in Port Washington, and I know he's really cognizant of that, of getting away from the monoculture, getting more species in, getting that diversity in, so you don't have this like blight of ash trees, which you can see
Right.
behind you too, like those tall trees there, those are all ashes, and a lot of people were really concerned that and expect the city to do something about it, and it's really a tough thing when you have so many dead trees. And
Yep. But you also
really-
have so many live trees.
Yes.
Your birch and, you know, maples, sugar maples, and lots of them. Well, this has been great. We will have a segment with John Crane so he can talk a little bit about this project from the city standpoint. And Jen and Jill, thank you so
Thank
much
you,
for
Lisa.
the work
Thank
that
you.
you're doing here.
Well, we look
I'm-
forward to working with wild
And
ones.
we look
Yes.
forward to working with you too. I think it's a great marriage and good partnership. Yeah, and thanks to John Michael, the man behind the camera. He puts up with us and figures it out and puts it all together. So thank you, John. I appreciate
John.
it.
yes, thank you.